This Week in Gaming with Naomi Kyle.
Hey there, I'm Naomi Kyle, and welcome back to This Week in Gaming. This week we're catching up on the backlash against Game Pass, the Black Ops 6 beta, Bioshock 4 leaks, college football's return to gaming, and a tantalizing new Xbox controller. We've got all of this week's gaming news, so let's get started. In most cases before a game's launch, players have an opportunity to experience a game they've been waiting years to play through what the video game industry calls a beta. Moreover, the beta also allows developers a window to fix any bugs that might occur before the game's official launch. Well, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 has announced that players can sign up for the Black Ops 6 beta during their official podcast. Game Pass subscribers or players who pre-order Black Ops 6 can get early access to the beta from August 30th to September 4th. Then from September 6th to September 9th, the open beta will be accessible for all players. Nice. Last week, an image was leaked depicting a screenshot from an early build of what gamers have been calling Bioshock 4. The image was featured in a former 2K visual effects artist demo reel from 2021. Though the image itself doesn't contain much information, fans of the Bioshock series have been meticulously dissecting every aspect of the screenshot to try and get some understanding of what can be expected from the next Bioshock game. The image illustrates that this build of the game would have had players experiencing the game from a first-person point of view, similar to the other games in the franchise. In the foreground is the game's user interface. There is a health bar, a stamina bar, one main skill icon, two sub-skill icons, and three options for weapons, with the current weapon in use for what the game is calling a ricochet shotgun. In the background is a large structure with a ball of light on top that resembles a miniature sun. And that's it. So fans, of course, have uncoded so much from this simple screen grab, we can't detail it all in this show, but speculating what is next for the franchise is one of gaming's greatest pastimes. I am very excited to see if any of these predictions make it into the final build of Bioshock 4, when and if it releases in the next few years. Fingers crossed. Since the launch of the Xbox Series X and S, Microsoft has collaborated with several movies to create quirky Xboxes and controllers. Like the time they collaborated with Dune 2 to make a Series S to make it look like an ornithopter, or when they collaborated with Sonic 2 to create a custom Series S complete with fuzzy red and blue controllers. Well, the latest addition to Xbox's family of custom consoles celebrates Marvel's most lovable anti-hero, Deadpool. The Deadpool Series X is promoting the Deadpool and Wolverine movie that is coming soon to theaters. The console is wrapped in a graphic resembling Deadpool's torso, armed with his iconic katanas across the back of the console. The custom console's most unique feature, however, is in the controllers that come paired with it. Each controller sports Deadpool's supersuit and comes specially equipped with additional artillery. Covering the battery pack is a perfect portrayal of Deadpool's posterior. That's right, Microsoft is dubbing their new creation the Cheeky Controller. Deadpool's buns of steel are said to offer a firm yet surprisingly comfortable grip. If you've seen the image for yourself, I'm sure you are wondering, where do you put the batteries? Well, since this is an Xbox controller after all, fear not, Deadpool's derriere is detachable with the help of a couple of magnets, so there's no need to get your hands dirty. Unfortunately, like the many Xbox collabs that have come before, the Deadpool console and controllers were made custom. So as far as we know, there's only one in existence, and it can only be won via the competition hosted on X, aka Twitter. What a pain in the butt. Well, if you want to try your luck, follow Xbox on X and repost with the hashtag Xbox Cheeky Controller Sweepstakes for a chance to win. You must be 18 or older to enter. The sweepstakes ends August 11th, 2024. The Halo TV series will no longer be moving forward after Paramount Plus concluded not to renew the show after 2 seasons. The Halo series is no stranger to hard times, though. Work on the series began way back in 2014 and before the show was picked up by Paramount Plus and finally premiered in March of 2022. It isn't known in terms of views how well the show did or didn't do, because most streaming services like to keep that information held close to their chest. But thanks to figures from Nielsen, who, for our younger listeners, is a company that has gauged viewership and ratings for television since the 1950s, thanks to them, we know that the second season of Halo was streamed a collective 1.8 billion minutes over the course of 8 weeks, which, after some quick math, I've determined equates to roughly 3.8 million viewers over that span of time. 3.8 million isn't great for an IP as big as Halo, but it isn't bad numbers for a TV series, and it seems that the showrunners don't think so either. It is rumored that producers at Amblin, Xbox, and 343 are looking at finding a new home for Halo's third season. While we're on the topic of TV shows, nominations for this year's Emmys went out to TV series across streaming and cable networks, so it should serve as no surprise to listeners that Amazon's Fallout series has received a whopping 16 nominations. The Emmy nominations range from sound editing to outstanding drama series. Ella Purnell was unfortunately not nominated for the Outstanding Lead Female Award for playing Lucy in the Fallout series, which is not okie dokie with me, but I'll let it slide. There's always season 2 anyway. So congratulations to all of the nominees, and I look forward to seeing who takes home an Emmy when the 76th Annual Emmy Awards is broadcast live from LA Live Peacock Theater on September 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Since Microsoft announced price hikes for Game Pass last week, they got the attention of the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, who since has filed with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The FTC is coming after Microsoft because they believe the price increase announced for Game Pass is inconsistent with the case Microsoft made during their trial against the FTC last year, where they alleged that their merger with Activision Blizzard would not harm consumers. The FTC classifies this harm to the consumer as coming in the form of a degraded product, referring to the new standard tier that removes access to day one releases while raising prices and replacing the console Game Pass tier. It gets better though. Data analysts predict that this price hike will contribute to a projected user growth of over 35% and $5.5 billion in revenue by 2025. For some perspective, that is more than a 200% increase over the $1.7 billion that Game Pass earned Microsoft back in 2022. There is still a lot to unpack here, so please stick around when I discuss this topic in depth with our guest, Kahlief Adams, later in the show. After a decade without an NCAA video game, EA's College Football 25 offered players the opportunity to relive the glory days with a class of all new players. The only problem being, glory does not come cheap. To play the game 3 days early on July 16th, aka the actual release date, players were asked to fork over a cool $100 for the deluxe edition of the game. And you know what? Some gamers actually did it. Okay, not just some, but rather 2.2 million people dropped $100 on the deluxe edition to play College Football 25 early. As you can imagine, this made EA very happy. It is very easy to see why publishers offer this early access pass at a premium. They stand to make more money with little to no extra effort involved. Friends, welcome to the new normal. Now let's go over the video games releasing this week.
Games out this week.
On July 22nd, Broken Lens crashes exclusively onto PC. On July 23rd, Weird Let's and Ramen launch exclusively on PC. The star names EOS shoots onto PS5, PC, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox Series X and S. F1 Manager 24 races onto PS4, PS5, PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. Conscript and Exophobia take aim at a release on all platforms. Then July 25th, Lost Castle 2 marches exclusively onto PC. Kingdom Rush 5 Alliance TD storms onto PC, iOS, and Android. Earth Defense Force 6 invades PS4, PS5, and PC. Arranger, a role-puzzling adventure, shifts over to PS5, PC, and Nintendo Switch. On July 26th, One Piece Odyssey Deluxe Edition gets ported over to the Switch. And finally, on the Epic Games Store, you can download Fist Forged in Shadow Torch for free from July 25th until August 1st.
Quest complete.
So that's it for the news this week. It's now time to chat with our guest, Kahlief Adams, who's back on our show to discuss the FTC claims against Microsoft and the high prices gamers are willing to pay for early access.
Select game mode. Multiplayer.
Kahlief, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be rocking with you, as always.
Yeah, we've got some interesting topics, and I'm especially glad to have you on the show this week. We did talk about this last week a little bit, but Xbox Game Pass has had some changes, some pretty significant changes, and everyone's been talking about it, but then a recent article just came out talking about how there's some stuff going on. The FTC is not too happy about these changes, given their merger last year with Activision, but I want to get your take on this. What are your thoughts on these price hikes, the changes that are happening? Yeah, what are your just general thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard deal for everybody kind of in the mix, right? You have the company version of it. The Xbox side of that is, they have stepped on another rake. It seems to be in having such a great showcase earlier in the year, having, a lot of good energy kind of coming their way, and then having, what was probably felt like an inevitable price hike from a lot of consumers then be something that they now have to try to figure out how to message, and also how to kind of, again, make the case for why Game Pass is supposed to be, costing a little bit extra in this way. I shared on an earlier episode of Small to Me that, like, one of the things I think of is this is just causing more confusion. And that's the thing they don't need to do, right? I think what they've tried to figure out is this good middle ground of value to money to, how do we share this information to our greater fan base? And for me, I feel like adding these extra tiers, raising prices, all of this other stuff just adds a layer of consumer confusion that they could just get away with or get rid of by just offering Ultimate. Ultimate is the highest tier that they have currently. You know what the pricing is going to wind up being for that. You get all the bells and whistles underneath that umbrella. And all of these other tiers just feel obsolete now at this point because of all the messaging you have to redo and the price confusion that you're adding into the mix, because everyone has subscription fear right now. Like, all subscriptions are going up, and kind of just building on that just doesn't make the case for it anymore in the same way. So I think the program is great, but the messaging, again, is failing in the ways that we think.
So you think there's something they could have done to simplify the whole, like the program, the subscription service, and making sure that it still really looks like a valuable, like each tier or whatever you want to call them are valuable to the consumer. What they're paying for, what are they getting, and is it worth it?
Yep, 1,000%. Yep.
Yeah. So obviously the FTC came out saying, kind of accusing Xbox of just degrading the product, increasing the prices on top of that. It wasn't aligned with some of the promises they made during their initial trial last year, during their huge Xbox Activision merger trial. Do you think FTC is right? Do they have any ground to stand on with these accusations? Microsoft has rebutted, but where do you think, who's in the right?
I mean, in the grand scheme, the biggest kind of boon and value add for Game Pass across the board was day one games, right? And once you introduce a tier that removes that, no matter what price point that winds up being, that changes the value and the idea of value towards a program that you initiated and kind of, marketed towards folks in that way. So to a certain extent, the FTC has a leg to stand on in that conversation. Of course, Microsoft is going to rebut that because, again, they have to try to, save face for that. But again, if you're a person who is going into a store and your understanding of what this process is and this program is that you get games on day one, no matter where it is, you get to play those things alongside all your friends. And now understanding that is not going to be the case for a certain tier, you have to think about that in a much larger way, right, as a consumer. So I think FTC is doing their due diligence in terms of helping the consumers kind of understand what their value is, but also Microsoft, again, has to figure out how to message this in a way that's going to let those people know that the money that they are spending is going to give them exactly what they're looking for, or at least grandfather them into some of the other stuff that they were already into, and giving them options to be able to maneuver. So I don't think the FTC is in a bad spot here. I think they're making the case pretty reasonably. That
being said, and based on your experience in this industry, how do you think this will all shake out for both parties? Is Microsoft going to try to change the messaging at this point? I feel like it's too late. Do you think the FTC is going to, I don't know, battle it out again with Microsoft?
I mean, I don't think this is going to raise the level of, DEFCON 1 for the FTC. Like, I don't think they're going to fight this as hard as they probably should. And I don't think Microsoft, like you said, is going to change their tune now. I think what they'll do is they'll give it some time. They'll see what adoption rates are going to wind up being because the numbers were stagnant for a long period of time. And if those numbers move in a certain direction, they'll have the ability to kind of pivot and say what they want to do next. But I don't think once you've made the decisions to make this move, you don't have a lot of space to switch, right?
Right.
Because then you're adding confusion into the consumer base that is already there. So I think this is going to wind up being a stalemate in those ways. And I think sadly, the consumers are the ones that have to deal with the brunt of it.
Yeah. Don't we always?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, shifting a little bit into another, again, talking about money, talking about prices of things. College football 25, huge success. Mm-hmm. Early access, 2.2 million players paid $100 to get 3 days early access to this game before it came out. What are your thoughts on paying $100 for just a 3 day, like instead of waiting 3 days, you're spending $100. It's a lot of money.
It is the FOMO tax, right? It's the fear of missing out tax, where you are paying extra money for the ability to say to your friend group, I am playing a thing before you. Personally, I'm not going to kick out extra money for that in those ways unless I'm really excited for a thing. And I'm, to be fair, super excited about College Football 25. I think that game is brilliant and super, super fun. We'll talk about stuff we've been playing in a minute. But, I'm not going to spend extra money for access in that way. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It is an easy marketing ploy to be able to do it. And if you can see through that, then you're in a good spot to be able to do it. But I also think, looking at it from an insider perspective, from an industry perspective, it is a good way to understand if your game is doing well, right? Pre-order sales are going to be big in those respects. It makes a ton of sense to figure out what the user base is going to be. And if you have the ability to see that all these folks are buying stuff and buying in this early, you have a lot of leeway to kind of message and move things for a community that cares. So as a consumer, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but as a marketer, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I mean, give them the option. If they're willing to pay, have the option there. It's just money waiting to be made. Okay, good to know your stance on that. I was curious if you were an early access fan, if you went that route with certain things. But yeah, huge success for College Football 25. Good on them. What are you playing these days? Anything piquing your fancy?
A lot of college football.
Oh, really? Okay. You're one of them. But you didn't pay the $100. Let's just make that clear. Okay.
No, I'm lucky enough to have gotten a review code for this one. But playing a ton of college football, shouting out to my Rutgers fan back in New Jersey, while also playing a ton of the Concord beta, which I have been a big fan. And full transparency, I worked on that for about a year. So getting a chance to see it kind of come to life in its fullest ways is a beautiful thing. But playing a ton of that, playing a bunch of First Descendant, which has been an interesting game in and of itself. The free-to-play game is very, very Nexon in the ways that it plays. And Flintlock has been a really interesting game to kind of jump into as well, which has been this mix-up of an RPG with a little bit of roguelike bits to it. So I've been playing a lot of stuff this week. It's just been very, very busy.
Have you played any Shadow of the Erdtree?
Shadow of the Erdtree, yes. I have been playing some of that and getting my butt kicked. Which has been,
typical,
fun and not fun in and of itself. But it's been great. Like, I think this summer has been just wild to see how many great games are kind of coming out and out in the mix. So with more things coming this week and next week as well. So
yeah, we should maybe talk about those. What can people expect? What are you looking forward to, I guess, that's coming out in the remainder of the year, maybe coming out soon?
Yeah, I think Marvel Rivals is a game that's on my radar in a big way. So waiting for that beta to finish up and drop. There was a game called Shim that just came out on multiple platforms where you're kind of ducking and diving through shadows to get from one place to another. Think of Frogger with shadows.
Right.
And gosh, there's just a couple of there's a bunch of stuff that's just dropping and coming out later in the year. But, this has been a very busy
summer.
Month.
Yeah.
And it's been a summer of games, as they say.
That's right.
Almost like they had a summer games fest happening
just last month.
Right?
Yeah. I've been playing, funny enough, I finally picked up another Crab's Treasure. So I'm getting into the Souls-like, but not Shadow of the Erdtree level. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break before I hop into that. So, easing my way into it with a more kiddie version of another Crab's Treasure, which is really fun. It's so cute. It's very calming, like not your typical Souls-like experience. Great little stories and characters. The writing is hilarious. I highly recommend anyone check that one out. Cool. Before we leave,
Sure.
Anything that people can look forward to that you're working on these days?
Ooh, if you're heading to San Diego Comic-Con, I'll be there hosting the Mortal Kombat 1 panel, which will be super fun. I get to check off a bucket list thing with that, so that's going to be huge and great. And just more Spawn on Me stuff is coming down the pipe. We're thinking about doing something towards our charitable arm of Spawn on Me called Spawn for Good. We've been doing that for a couple of years, so we're debating on what that's going to be this year. But a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipeline for sure.
Very exciting. Well, as always, thank you so much for being on my show. It's always so good to have you on, and I hope you'll be back soon.
Anytime you need me, I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks, Kahlief.
Later.
Kahlief Adams is founder and host of the Spawn on Me podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Kahlief Adams.
Flawless victory. Continue.
And that's This Week in Gaming. I'm your host, Naomi Kyle, and I had such a wonderful time bringing you the news. Thank you so much for listening. Shout out to my co-writer, Josh Seaman, for helping to put the show together every week. Don't forget to let me know what you're playing and what you think of these stories by tagging me at Naomi Kyle on social. From all of us here at This Week in Gaming, we wish you a gaming-filled week. We'll see you again soon. Talk to you later.
This Week in Gaming podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts. Download the iHeartRadio app for more podcasts just like these.